Good evening. My name is Crystal DeYoung. I am an author, and my first book is now ready for its public debut. It has been published. I have a print version and two ebook versions. One is fixed and the other is refillable. Each has their own separate ISBN number, which can be found on my Patreon page, patreon.com, Crystal R. DeYoung. And I got this just a little bit ago, delivered by UPS. I take my fingers off the cover. My printer and distributor is Ingram Spark. This is actually my second copy. The first one was done, kind of as proof to make sure that I had all my design issues resolved. It turned out I didn't. But it helped get me to this point. And actually, this is the first book here. Part of it was the font. I struggled with the blue from the moment I designed this cover on whether or not I actually liked it. And then it occurred to me, what other color could I do? Hello. Gold. This is technically a Regency historical. It has a strong fantasy element in it, and it's part of this series that actually, as the series progresses, the fantasy element becomes increasingly obvious, especially in the second book I'm working on right now. But I'll give you a little teaser, and we'll start with the blurb. Boy, a girl in a slingshot. Sometimes a destiny written in the stars does not become a match made in heaven. Lord Alexander Cranston, Marquess of Ashton, and Lady Isabel Harrington give new meaning to childhood sweethearts. In fact, there's little love lost between them, eventually culminating in an episode involving a slingshot. 15 years later, Alexander is the Duke of Wilmington. He's ready to claim his soulmate. Only Isabel had overcome a series of tragedies since she saw him last. Has she forgiven him for their contentious childhood? Is she finally ready to move beyond her past and embrace her destiny? Ooh. It's a long way to find out. You have to read it. And one other thing. Actually, two. This book I started actually about 30 years ago. I worked on it for about 10 years and then set it aside when we made a long distance move from Iowa to Texas. I also made a career transition from healthcare into graphic design. I've now been a graphic designer for more than 20 years. But never say never. I ended up becoming a caregiver again for my husband, who's a disabled veteran, when he suffered a back injury in 2006, getting ready to go to Iraq. As caregivers do have a special place in my heart. In fact, the gentleman that helped me edit this book is also a caregiver caring for his 91-year-old mother. And this book's release is also occurring at a very difficult time when there's a serious illness out there that some people have died from. And because I also worked in healthcare, I do understand what healthcare workers are going through right now, at least a little bit. So I'm going to start with the dedication for this book. If you pay close attention, you will notice the story has more than one caregiver. I guess it's true, you write what you know. I myself am a caregiver, and I wish to dedicate this book to others who've made sacrifices to help their loved ones, or do it as a profession. My heartfelt thanks to another caregiver, Captain Dave Hutchison, for helping me with editing. I appreciate you took the time out of your exhausting days to clean up my comments. Captain Morgan says hi. I must also issue a big thank you to my local writers group, Northwest Houston Romance Writers of America. I've enjoyed getting to know those who've attended the monthly meetings, and you've taught me a great deal. Yeah, I'll give you one last thing. The prologue. You might say this is the synopsis of the story. Many eons ago, I was the heart of a massive blue star. It burned hot and bright for millions of years, then suddenly died in an explosion which sent me hurtling into the Milky Way. Eventually, I got swept into the formation of a small planet, which would be called Earth by its future inhabitants. Though time has no meaning to such as I, it gradually changed me into a dark blue stone the size of a walnut. In a twist of fate, curious beings who place tremendous value on minerals dug me out of the earth. My star heart was exposed and honed by the hands of an artist. Lovingly, he placed me in a gold necklace setting surrounded by moonstones. Through the spoils of war, I came into the possession of a young general. His heart longed for a beautiful maiden, wild as the wind of the Black Sea. She did not wish to be tamed and refused his courtship, until a wise old woman proclaimed the entwined destiny had been written in the stars. The hopeful lover had a stone in his possession, which proved it. The general made one last attempt to offer his heart. He gave me as a gift to prove his eternal devotion. The maiden finally accepted him, and they became the most legendary lovers of the Eastern Roman Empire. Their story told in epic poems, passed on by generations. Time travels in a circle. Through female descendants of a general and his lover, I embarked on a 1,000-year journey through history. Though I eventually traveled far from my origins, it was always my destiny to unite lovers, and I've existed long enough to know history often repeats itself. If you want to know what else happens, read the book. It is available on Patreon, actually, in its entirety, in 24 posts, one post per chapter. Although the prologue and the epilogue are included with chapter 1 and chapter 24. You can also find the ISBN numbers for these versions in the chapter 4 post, which is actually my free sample chapter because it's one of my favorites. And there's a little bit of background history on this book and what it took to get here. I started this last year in April of 2019 and sent it in for copyright in early January and got my certificate in March, right before everything started getting closed down. I was waiting for my copyright before I did my DBA, so I'm still waiting for that. Our county courthouse, our county recorder's office, clerk's office has not been open since then. So once I have my business ducks in a row, I will be able to sell this book myself. But right now, if you support me on Patreon, you can read it in its entirety. And it's the $3 membership is what it's under. So you don't have to sign up for the more expensive one in order to access this book. And you can also leave comments for me. If book club if you want to. So you can leave your impressions of each chapter and let me know what you really think. And also engage in a conversation with others who are interested in looking at this book. And then if you like it, you're more than welcome to buy a copy, and those who do join me on Patreon to read this book will probably be getting a special offer. It's a discount, especially on the printed copy. The digital copy is the same price as what it would cost for 1 month of membership for Patreon. And this is a 90,000 word book. So how quickly you read it, it just depends on you. Of course, I've read it so many times now that I can read it in 2 days. But I have it memorized by now, I think. But I would be happy to have you join me there. There were some parts that were really hard for me to write, and others that made me really happy. You might know which ones they are if they affect you the same way they did me. And sometimes I wonder why I waited 20 years to come back and write it, but I'm very glad I did, despite everything that's going on. There have been many times I asked myself, what the hell were you thinking, woman? Why did you come back to this? I actually found the manuscript, probably part of it, in my garage in December of 2018, after we had a flood caused by our washing machine connection. It soaked everything in the garage, but it was due to be cleaned. What are you going to do? At the time, I found this envelope, copy in it that came back from a critique partner. In the 1990s, I looked in the envelope and I thought, I'm never going to do anything with that. I threw it away. I think it was the last copies that I had of it. And in some ways, I think maybe it was a blessing I did. Some things changed. The hero's name changed. His first name especially changed. The fantasy element wasn't originally in this book, but once I decided to go indie, I took the fetters off and went to town, and I wrote the story I wanted to write. And that enabled me to finish it this time instead of messing around with it for another 10 years. I had my first draft done in about 2 months, and then started refining from there. So well, I do a lot of different activities, but writing is the one thing that challenges me the most and makes me the most creative and pushes me to try harder, to do better. And I credit that to the teacher that I had in middle school. Her name was Mrs. Buchanan. She gave me the foundation for both written and spoken language. And now that I'm in my 50s, I've had a few years to hone it, and the results are here. Book number 2, right now the working title is The Pearl Diver Song. That might change, we'll see, but I'm up to chapter 22 right now. So that one will hopefully be released before the end of the year. Just have to see how the editing and stuff goes. But in the meantime, this one is ready, and there will be sneak peeks of The Pearl Diver Song on Patreon. There's already one chapter there now. It's the prologue. And there's blog posts, and I don't know, there might be a recipe that shows up. People do like free food, so we'll see. But I do look forward to seeing you there and getting to know you better. And also kind of pay attention here. There might be a project or two that comes out of this book. And if you'd like to make things, it might be worth coming back to see what I'm up to. That we might get to make something like this necklace. I actually have it hanging up over here. I made this in, I think I started it in October, and it took me 10 tries to get the center stone. So, and there are no directions out there for it. I had to figure it out myself. So, if you're lucky, I might be feeling generous, and I will share how to make this. Again, my name is Crystal, RDN, and the book is Heart of the Star. Thank you.